Hi everyone. So this is going to be a little bit more of a basic training, but it's mostly a focus on food safety and overall food processes that must be followed when we're packaging and preparing food to go out to the different programs and clubs that we serve food to. So first, we'll just go over just a couple things to start with to give us a better idea of what we're going to talk about. Um, the biggest thing, as far as this training is concerned, is that these principles that we're going to talk about don't expire. They don't have an expiration date, they're just constant. And so when we talk about these things, it's expected that they're um, continually put into practice. And so as we do reviews in the future and performance reviews, these practices should still be in effect every single day that we come into work, every day that we're um, starting new tasks and working to prepare food for the kids. That needs to always have that same level of success and effectiveness as we prepare food. Next, so it's the schedule. What we're going to talk about, the few main things that we're going to go over is packaging, um, how that process works, why it's important in our food safety process, and um, and just like different errors and mistakes to look for, things to avoid. Second, we'll go over food safety, things that are important when we are preparing food so that we can ensure that we're giving food products to children that are safe and good quality as well. And then lastly, we'll do a short practice so that we can review everything that we've learned, and so that you can put those concepts into place before actually preparing any food for any children. And as we go along, if you have any questions, just let me know. We can review whatever we need to, just to make sure that these concepts are well understood. So this is just a general list of basic safety tips that we want to follow in the warehouse, because it is a warehouse setting and we're dealing with big fridges and freezers and tools. We want to make sure that we're really safe in our preventative in the issues that could happen. A lot of this comes with the heavy things that we work with. So lots of boxes of food that can be heavy, really large things, removing a lot of equipment when the food orders come, stuff like that. And so if you need, get some stretching in before to make sure that nothing's tight. Make sure you're lifting with good form, not lifting with your back, but trying to move with your legs more. If something's too heavy, ask for someone to help you move. It would just be obviously much worse situation if you end up injuring yourself and then we end up having to throw away damaged food that fell or got spilled. So we want to make sure that we're handling everything carefully, as well as all the tools that we'll use in the food preparation. Just make sure that everything is handled safely, and if you need help, ask. A lot of this stuff in there shouldn't be moved or wouldn't need to be moved. So basic things like dollies and shelves and stuff. If something like that does need to be moved, then you can ask for help. There are other like spills and hazards that could be an issue. Most of the foods that we get are already packaged, and so that's not a huge issue that way. But we do have other cleaning supplies and products that way that we try to keep in a separate area. So if they do get spilled or somewhere else, then that does become a hazard for the rest of the warehouse. Probably the biggest thing that we see is issues with cross contamination. We'll talk a little bit more about that in the food safety section, but this is super important. Just when we're coming to work, we want to make sure that we're leaving the environment we came from outside and cleaning and ready to come into the new environment that's now clean, so that we can still prepare a satisfactory product for those programs. So in our in our warehouse. You've seen it, but we have two coolers and a freezer. They're very large. They hold a lot of food products in there. But it's really important to know how they work, how the doors work, and so that if any accident occurs, then you know how to get yourself out of that situation. And so we'll continue to go in more detail in the practice just so we can show you how the doors work and how to get out if you're inside, stuff like that. But in general, they just push from the inside. If you do get stuck, the freezer is, it's a freezer, it's really cold. So if you are in there for extended periods of time, there's a coat in there, and we'll show you that so that you can put that on if needed. First aid, we'll show you where the first aid kit is so that if anything comes up, then you can use that as needed. There should be one in the office and then one in the break room as well for anybody that needs that. CPR, so everybody will be trained on CPR before they can start work. And so those that are already trained will just try to have a renewal of that every 6 months or so to review everything to make sure we still understand those concepts. And then important phone numbers, those are listed in the break room. I can show you that paper, but it has emergency contact, poison control, just a lot of different helpful phone numbers to know if there is a type of emergency or disaster. Okay, so moving on more to the packaging side. So the biggest thing when we're first dealing with food is knowing the paperwork that's involved. So it's really important for us to know where the food is coming from and where it's going so we can track all the movement so we're not losing any food. All of this food is really important because it has a purpose of where it's going. So we want to make sure that we're super diligent with keeping track of everything. The main thing is that we're understanding the different components that go into a children's meal, the different requirements. Each week, the weekly menu for each school, and so that if something's out of place, you can recognize that and say, oh, there must be something wrong with the menu because that wasn't what I saw on the weekly one. The delivery receipts for each school every single day, those need to be filled out correctly. You need to follow those food products exactly so that you know what's going into each meal. And then lastly, and probably most importantly, is the inventory count. So when the order comes each week, we'll keep track of what we got and add everything up. But then each time that you take something out of inventory to package it and to put it into a meal, we take it out as we package. Not as it leaves the warehouse, but as we are packaging it. We take it out of inventory because it's already been touched and put away. Okay. So on to packing meals. There are multiple components to making sure that we're packaging these meals correctly. Kind of my biggest motivation behind making sure that we're successful in packaging meals is the thought of, the meals getting distributed to all the kids, and one kid opens his bag and he's missing his juice box or he's missing his fruit cup. And everybody else has a juice box, and this one kid doesn't have a juice box. He's going to be absolutely devastated. He'll just be crushed. And so we want to make sure that every single time we're packaging a meal, we're really careful and really diligent in making sure that every food item gets placed in that bag. So that first starts with getting all the paperwork for that school. So you know exactly what food items are going to be and how many meals you need to make. This is your guideline, your rubric of how to ensure that you're getting the right number and the right food for every single student. Second, accuracy. So sometimes, especially at the beginning, we might have, you'll finish the entire school and we'll have someone go through it again and make sure that every bag has all the meal components and it's the exact right number of finished meals. Just to make sure that over and over we're accurate and consistent with the products that we're producing. Safety. So we'll talk more about this in the next one, but packaging is absolutely pointless if we're not safe in the way that we handle the food. So we can't send the meals out if there's not correct sanitation process followed or if this food isn't safe. Next, so when you do package the food, everything goes into a crate. They can stack on each other, and so it's important to not overflow the crates, otherwise the food falls out on the ground and it spills everywhere. and we can't use that food anymore because it's been on the ground. So that's really important, just to make sure that all the crates are filled correctly. The bags as well, same thing. If something happens and they fall, all the food will fall out if they're not secured properly. This is also self-explanatory, but really important. After you package all the meals, it has to be labeled. Otherwise, it's just a bunch of bags in a crate. So that's one of the last things as far as packaging that's just crucial, is making sure that after you've packaged everything, label it as well. Lastly, if we do get leftovers, we should be breaking it down accurately, keeping account, throwing away items that are expired, throwing away items that can't be refrozen or put back in the fridge, stuff like that. Just making sure that we're keeping track of those food items. Okay, next. So the basic food safety concepts that we expect everyone to follow are clean, separate, cook, and chill. So first, clean. So that's going to be clean yourself, clean your hands, tie your hair back, put your hairnet on, clean the surfaces that you're going to work with, clean all of the tools that you're going to need, and then put on gloves after you've washed your hands. So anything that you're going to be touching, any surfaces you're going to be using, should be cleaned before you use those things. Separate. So when we're dealing with foods, it's a little bit easier in our situation because all of the foods are prepackaged, but we do want to make sure that we're keeping freezer foods away from fridge foods, that they're separated into their correct spots, and that especially when foods are exposed, we want to make sure we're keeping meat away from vegetables and that kind of thing, things that leak, just to make sure everything's separated and kept safe that way. When we are preparing foods, we want to make sure that we're doing it quickly to ensure that, the foods that are supposed to be in the fridge or in the freezer can still be kept cold enough. And so when we're preparing, we want to make sure that we're doing it safely and quickly as possible. Lastly, so after you package the meal, everything will need to go in the fridge as soon as possible. So even if there's a freezer meal, that gives it time for it to thaw before it goes out to the students. So everything has to be placed in the fridge. No matter if you're going to the van soon to drop off the food, it has to be placed in the fridge just to make sure that the temperature is controlled. Okay, so lastly, we are going to do a little practice simulation. We're going to break into two teams as a group, and so each team is going to work on 3 days of meals. We're going to package all the meals, load them on the dolly, put them in the van, make sure all the paperwork's filled out correctly, go to the school, unload the meals, and then return to the warehouse with any leftovers. And then we're going to go over each of the criteria to see what was difficult, what we missed, and what mistakes might have been made. So we'll do that here pretty soon. But lastly, I just wanted to recap. So the basic things that we went over is physical safety, making sure that we're keeping ourselves safe so that we can work efficiently and safely. So, making sure we're not lifting things too heavy, and that if we need to, we can stretch before, stuff like that. Lifting in correct form, making sure that we're keeping track of food, so documentation and filling out paperwork correctly. Preparing the food, packaging everything correctly to make sure that we're following those standards to make sure that every meal is packaged the same and there's enough meals going to each school. And then lastly, food safety, making sure that all the food that we're handling is going to be safe and in good condition for the kids for when they receive it. But we'll go over any questions you have right now and discuss what's next. Thanks.